Cari fratelli e sorelle, and welcome to my weekly video blog. We're still here, is the first thing to say. The sky has not fallen down, the apocalypse has not happened, but there is still quite a considerable amount to discuss in this blog concerning the same topic as last week. Last week I talked to you about the upcoming referendum in the European Union for the UK to decide by popular vote whether it wanted to stay or leave. I talked to you about how I felt, about what I felt would happen, and how the campaign was going. Now, I voted out, and it was expected, even up until about midnight on the 23rd, which was the date that we all did our voting, that the country as a whole had probably decided to remain. And then the votes started coming in, and they did it sort of city by city, basically. And they started with places like Newcastle, and they expected it to be overall a majority for Remain, which it was. But straight away they were lower. The gap between, those that wanted to stay and those that wanted to leave was not anywhere near as big as they thought it would be. There are some key areas that obviously voted to remain. Scotland was expected to, and it did. Gibraltar was expected to do, and it did. The City of London, most of those boroughs were expected to, and they did. And the only other real area that was, mostly remain was the little sort of golden triangle, which is sort of where I live basically, between Harrogate, York and Leeds. Everywhere else was very, very split and very, very close, and one of the areas that they were hoping would be quite decisive was places like Birmingham, for example, and they weren't decisive at all, and the overall majority was, I think, 52 to 48 or something like that. It was a very, very close split. About 75% of the population voted, which is very high for a British sort of political thing. Very high. The last time they saw numbers voting like that in a general election was 1992, I think. So a huge amount of people voted. About 30,000, just over 30,000, and literally it was split. I think about 15,000 to 17,000 or something like that. It was very, very. Sorry, I think that might have been million, not thousand, sorry. 30 million people in a split of about 15 million to 17, something like that. Now, right away, the pound dropped in value, and it dropped in value very, very quickly to a level that hasn't been seen since the mid-1980s. The star of the show for me was the Governor of the Bank of England, who came out very, very quickly and said very, very calmly, actually, although nobody was expecting this result, the banks are not as stupid as they once were. They planned for this to possibly happen, and do not worry, because we won't hesitate to make sure that from a financial position the sterling is going to be okay. The drop in 10% rose back up to 5%, which was good. The other thing to make absolutely clear is that we do not even start to leave the Union until Article 50, which is the get-out clause, if you like, of the Union for member states, is activated. And David Cameron did an interesting thing. We knew that he would have to stand down sometime between now and 2020 because he didn't want to run again as Prime Minister for a next term, so we knew that was going to happen. We also figured that in the long run, if the referendum was to go out, he would probably resign then. I don't think we were expecting him to resign quite so quickly. He came out very quickly and said, I'm going to be gone by October, And therefore, of course, he is not, one supposes, triggering Article 50 himself, because once Article 50 is triggered, you move straight into the negotiations, and he was making it clear that he could not lead the country through those negotiations, and therefore he was basically going to hold course until October, despite the fact that Europe was very upset that we didn't invoke Article 50 straight away, because of course they were like, well, if you're going to leave, do let us know that you're going to leave. There was no hint, however, that they were going to do another referendum, as some people in the Remain camp wanted. There was no indication that they were going to have a vote on it in the Commons and exercise their Commons majority to remain despite the vote. No, what they were going to do was absolutely nothing until October. They're going to spend the next month and a half doing a leadership contest to see who will replace David Cameron in October. They will then go on their summer holidays. I know, bizarre, isn't it? And then when they all get back, they will elect a new leader. And then at that point, who knows what will happen. They could move to a snap election so that they don't have to, if voted in, leave in 2020, which gives them extra time. Or they could choose at that point to exercise Article 50 straight away and move into negotiations. Or they could ignore it. You know, we actually don't know what they're going to do yet. A lot of the Remain camp, and this is a lot of just general people, have been so ugly and sour grapes over this, so ugly and nasty. It's bizarre, because actually this has not really affected anybody yet, and it may not affect anybody. You know, we still don't know if we're actually going to leave at the end of the day or not. It has, however, destabilised the British government. Possibly one could argue that across the summer, as they all go on recess, it doesn't really matter anyway, and perhaps it would do no harm. So there's a leadership contest opening up to see who replaces David Cameron. That's fine, but Labour, which is the opposition party, has also had a little bit of an issue. Jeremy Corbyn, who's the socialist, he has been accused by members basically of not working hard enough to try and get people to remain, and therefore they're tabling a vote of no confidence, and his shadow cabinet have mostly resigned already. He says he's not going anywhere, but who knows? The chances are, I think, quite high that he will either have a difficult time remaining in as leader of the opposition between now and October, or somehow he will go, and if he ends up going, then there needs to be another leadership contest there. Until the British government have decided who is going to be in charge, who is going to be in charge of the opposition, they can't decide anything else. And then, of course, you have the Scots, who almost overwhelmingly voted to stay in, wanting to have another referendum on independence so that they can vote out and then they can reapply for membership in the EU. In fact, Nicola Sturgeon, who's sort of the nationalist there in charge, has made a bit of a hash up there, because she's like, well, you know, the Scots want to do everything they can to stay in the Union. And, you know, you cannot have informal discussions with Europe about leaving and rejoining before you actually do it. It doesn't work like that. They're not going to talk trade relations until you have exercised Article 50. And if you exercise Article 50 and the country comes out, Scotland will then have to reapply. They don't just stay in the Union, the European Union. It doesn't work like that. We would all have to come out, then we would have to separate, then they would have to reapply. And, you know, Nicola Sturgeon doesn't like that either. So the Europeans are meeting tomorrow, I believe, to talk about this and what's going on. But again, nothing happens, nothing changes until Article 50 has been, you know, until somebody's pressed that button. And at the moment, we are no nearer, absolutely no nearer to doing that yet. So at least until October, things may change within the British government, you know, leadership-wise, but it doesn't look like it's going to have any impact. It's not really going to... We're not out of the Union, we're not even starting to come out of the Union until we've got that sorted out. So October will be the next date to sort of really, you know, talk about this. The other thing to mention this week is that I have been diagnosed with a condition called plantar fasciitis or something like that. Basically, a tendon in my foot between my heel and the arch has somehow got sort of hurt in some way. I don't know quite how I've done it. They say it happens to people that do a lot of walking. I'm a bit confused because I thought, well, if that was the case, they would probably sign me off work, wait for it to recover and go back. But I'm told the best thing to do, despite the fact that that's the cause of it, is to walk on it. There are some exercises which I shall be starting shortly. There are anti-inflammatories that I'm on at the moment, which is, I've started them slowly and they don't look like they've had any interaction with the sertraline, so that looks okay, but I only have a month's course of them. The doctor did sort of say she thought it would last about 6 weeks minimum. So after my after my retreat holiday in August, if I still have the pain, I shall have to go back to them and say, look, what's going on here? You know, there is a possibility after that I can talk to my podiatrist in September, because I know from other people that have had it, insoles seem to be the way forward. The issue with that is that I'm already wearing an insole for foot things, for posture and for pressure points and stuff like that. So I'm just having to bear with it at the moment. And all we can say is, you know, we'll have to look at how much better it might be when I finish the course of the anti-inflammatories and am due to go back, I suppose. So, being that that is about all, and to say that I was quite saddened to hear that Ryan Jimmo has been killed. Apparently a hit and run incident in Canada. People may remember that me and him did have a little bit of a spat at one time online. He was frankly not very nice about overweight people, and it was not nice in a sort of abusive term rather than, you know, sort of suggesting things. It was unhelpful, and we got into a bit of an argument over it. And we haven't really talked since, and that was a long time ago. So, yeah, but I'm sad to hear that. There are a few birthdays. We have a belated birthday for Eddie Wineland, because I forgot to get this uploaded yesterday. And then the rest of the birthdays, a couple. We've got David Wren, Hazel Dennis, Jason Young, and Keith Atkinson. So, many happy returns to all of those. I hope they have a fantastic birthday and eat lots of cake. And that is it for this week.